Good evening, friends, and welcome to the second in our series under the rubric of the agriculture policy discussion. Uh, and the theme that we decided to pick up is what's the next big idea in agriculture? And the motivation for choosing this theme and this format was that I think this room and also the online audience hardly needs to be educated that agriculture has been one sector of the economy where we've always had big policy ideas before the country, right from the 50s onwards. The abolition of zamindari, the entire ecosystem created around the Green Revolution, then the White Revolution, then the Blue Revolution, the 2000, the noughties saw the breakthroughs in cotton and maize. But for about the last 2 decades, and I think we should be fair that this is not only a phenomenon of recent times, at least for the last 20 years, we've not had any major idea in agriculture. We've had dozens of schemes. Of course, recently we also saw for the first time a collapse or a convergence of schemes and their number being reduced. But all these are basically repackaging of existing ideas under different names. So we, Siraj Saab and I, decided to launch this open forum. It's like a public discussion forum, which is led by civil society and which seeks to ask these questions around a specific theme in every one of these series. So we began last month by discussing the importance of a legal guarantee of the MSP. That was a very interesting and I think a fairly agitated discussion, but we had some very interesting points of view. One of the speakers of the last session is here. I'm happy to see Mr. Ajay Jhakar in the audience. And this session we've chosen the theme of is a formal land leasing framework the next big idea? This has been talked about at least for the last 3 decades, if not more. The majority of states do not have a legal provision for tenancy, but every evidence, every survey suggests that informal tenancy is the norm, especially among smallholders. So would having a formal framework pose or mark a kind of breakthrough in our agriculture policy making? That's the theme that we want to address today. And before I ask the chair to add his words to this session, may I say that we were, most grateful for the presence, of course, of Professor Bina Agarwal, Dr. Sidhu, and also Dr. P.K. Joshi. But unfortunately, Dr. P.K. Joshi has had a little health problem this afternoon, so he's not joining us. But we'll hear from our 2 experts, who I'll shortly introduce after Siraj Saab has spoken. And then, of course, we'd like the audience to engage on the subject as much as the speakers, not just ask questions and comment on what they've said, but also their own ideas are most welcome in this forum. We are also live webcasting this session because we found last time a large number of students and others joined the session. This series is also hosted on the YouTube channel of IIC. And again, we're very grateful to IIC for giving us this forum to host this talk series. So, Siraj Saab, would you please formally start?
Thank you, Pravesh. I will be very brief. Leasing of agricultural land has been a subject of discussion for long years. And even during the enactment and agitation about the farm laws, the contract farming took the center stage. And the farmers were agitated for a variety of reasons. But one of the major reasons was that fear that they may lose title of the land, etc., etc. So leasing is not adequately recorded. Only Andhra Pradesh, the data shows that only in Andhra Pradesh, some 30% incidence of leasing is actually recorded, but we know that in several other states, including Punjab, Dr. Sidhu is here, he was the Agriculture Commissioner of Punjab, leasing is very common. And unlike other states, in Punjab, it is not share in production. It is actually money which has to be given by the person who is taking it on lease, and irrespective of the crop he grows, that amount has to be paid to the landholder. So the new government in 2014 had set up a committee under Dr. Haq, which submitted its report. There was a lot of excitement at the level of the then chairperson of the Niti Aayog, but somehow we did not see much progress. So I'll stop there. We have very eminent speakers, and we hope that there will be some new ideas. Also, we have some farmers. Mr. Abrar Ahmed is the chairman, was the chairman of the Settlement Commission. He owns land in district Hamirpur in UP, and so he will, and of course, we have Mr. Chakar. We hope to get the farmers' perspective also. So, over to you, Pravesh.
Thank you, sir. I think we could not kick off the session with a more distinguished person than Professor Bina Agarwal. I think almost everybody in this room hardly needs to be introduced to her. Seminal work on women's land rights, a field of her own. All of us read it as young civil servants, benefited from it. She's been member of any number of working groups in the erstwhile Planning Commission. She's taught at various global universities, currently teaching economics at the University of Manchester in the UK. A Padma Shri awardee in 2008, besides dozens of other awards that I could spend half the session listing. So, Professor Bina Agarwal, over to you. And you have about 20 minutes. At about 17, I'll just give you a hint.
Yeah, although you have lost one speaker.
So you can spill over if you want. Of course. Yes. Over to you.
So this is on right now, is it? Okay, so I'll just check this thing out. This is the up change. Okay, wonderful. Now it's gone off. Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm really honored to have so many people who know so much about the subject and many old friends and new ones. I will not assume that you already know everything about it, not for this audience here, but since many people are joining online. So what are the questions I will address? The four main questions. One is the importance of land leasing, tenancy. Secondly, tenancy reform after independence and its outcomes. Why do we need further tenancy reforms if we've already done it at the time of independence? And are there any out-of-the-box approaches to tenancy reform beyond and including, of course, the Model Land Lease Act of 2016? Now, why is tenancy or land leasing important? Now, of course, as Pravesh ji said, it's not a new idea. It goes back centuries. It has taken different forms. But from an economics perspective, land leasing balances demand and supply for land. What it does is it matches those who want land to cultivate and those who want to opt out of farming, either wholly or partially. So you may have 10 hectares, you may want to lease out 1 hectare, and so on. Now, Indian leasers, although it's true that we don't, because of the nature of hidden tenancy, which we'll come to, we don't have exact figures. There's some broad figures that people say that something like 13% of the operated area is under tenancy and so on, but we could take that as a minimum. Indian leasers are mostly landless and small farmers, but of course there are also big farmers who are leasing land. Now, lease terms, as Dr. Hussain also said, can vary. So sharecropping, what does sharecropping mean? That if you produce a certain amount of crop, a certain proportion of that goes as rent to the person who owns the land, But it can be also fixed rent, and fixed rent itself can be in cash or kind. Now, if you're sharecropping, landowners get a share of the harvest, and they also, as a result, share some of the risks if the harvest fails. Now, some owners, especially if you look at the literature from the 70s, also shared input costs. And so if you share the input costs to some degree, you share a larger part of the risk. Now, why did we need land and tenancy reform at the time of independence? Farm productivity was low, output was inadequate to feed even rural households. let alone a surplus for industrial workers. At that point in 51, but we were producing 51 million tons of food grains. Today, we are producing 332 million tons. So it was really inadequate. Rural poverty was high, and land ownership was highly unequal. We also know that tenants were exploited, given India's history of absentee landlordism under zamindari, and there was unrelenting colonial tax collection. Many of you would have read all of that. Landlords demanded exorbitant crop shares, leading to poor tenants into debt traps. And there's a massive literature especially in the EPW in the 70s and 60s and 70s about interlinked land credit markets. Now, leases were informal. Small tenants face insecurity of tenure. If you have a lease and it's not recorded, you could be evicted easily. And with insecure tenure, as we argue as economists, farmers have no incentive to invest in the land. And if you don't invest in the land, it also affects aggregate output. So the post-independence land reform was a very ambitious program. It was land reform and tenancy reform. And it was particularly 1950s to 60s, some states went into early 70s. But the land reform law was passed separately by each state because agriculture is a state subject under the Constitution. Now, reforms had three main motives. One is to raise production efficiency. Second was to tackle inequality and poverty. And the third was to produce a surplus for industry. And the key features, the center heart of that was land to the tiller. Now, I want to just mention this, that if you look at the global literature of the 60s and 50s, and even before that, actually, if you look at the literature from the 1920s to the 60s, almost every country went through land reform, and land to the tiller was at the heart of it. This includes socialist countries, the period of collectivization in the USSR in socialist countries, and it includes the 1960s land reform in post-colonial countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So India was not alone in this, and very similar conditions prevailed prior to the reforms. Now, what did it mean? It meant that you abolished intermediaries and in order to eliminate exploitative landlordism, and so enhanced tenure security, efficiency, and surplus, the three motives I mentioned. The second element was ceilings on land holdings. So you fix ceilings, each state fixed a different ceiling, sometimes it varied by type of land, and there was appropriate land above the ceiling, they appropriated, and the idea was that the surplus, so-called surplus that you got, was to be distributed to the landless and land poor, and this would take care of equality and reducing poverty. Now, of course, to what extent it happened, I'll come in the next slide. But some of these laws, which is less well known, incorporated gender unequal inheritance laws. So at least 6 states in the Northwest not only had land reform and tenancy rules, but they actually said how was the land to be inherited. What were the results of this post-independence land reform? Yes, we know it broadly undermined zamindari absentee landlordism, but remnants of feudalism remain, especially in Eastern India. And it created, especially in Northwest India, but in some other parts, a class of what they called capitalist farmers, who later became the backbone of the Green Revolution. Now, again, some of you would know there was this famous Ashok Mitra, Utsa Patnaik debate on modal production in Indian agriculture, where they said, "In search of the capitalist farmer" was the title of one of the articles. Land inequality did decline, but it did not disappear. Ceilings were not always enforced, of course, due to the political clout of large landowners. If you look at the composition of Indian Parliament, with change, you had not just lawyers, but also landowners in it. And what's interesting is, you can ask questions later, that in Kerala, I found, and maybe in some other states, husbands gave up their wives' land to fulfill ceiling laws. How do we know this? Because there were actually petitions you find historically of women petitioning, saying, how can you take away my tiny little plot in order to fulfill the ceiling requirements? Because they aggregated the household land for the ceiling. Now, under land to the tiller, states banned or greatly restricted tenancy to prevent the re-emergence of exploitative tenant-landlord relationships. And there's a whole, in this, there's a whole list of, there's some states, about 3 states, Kerala, Manipur, and one other state, completely banned tenancy. There were a range of about 10 states which said it's restricted. You allow it for certain categories of people. People who are disabled, if you're widows, you have land, then you can lease it out. And then there were other rules. There's some other rules for parts of Punjab and Haryana and so on. So there's a whole list of that. I won't spend time on it. What's important to remember, which is not always emphasized, that these laws were placed in the 9th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Why? Because it was to prevent a challenge by influential landowners, including the embedded gender inequality. What did it mean? It meant that it could not be challenged. The laws placed under the 9th schedule of the Indian Constitution could not be challenged on constitutional grounds, either that it violated your right to private property, which was also part of the Constitution, or that it included gender inequality. Now, this is very important when we talk about current questions of reform. So then, well, all this happened. Why do we still need tenancy reform? So here's part of what was already said, which is earlier reforms favored land to the tiller. So tenants were favored over non-farming owners. Landowners eschewed formal leasing for fear of losing their titles if the tenant claimed rights. And therefore, informal leasing persisted. We know it's widespread. You only get the tip of the iceberg if you try and collect data on it. Of course, if you go to a set of villages and you do a full census, then you get a full picture. But obviously, you can't do that for all the villages in the country. Now, what is the problem with informal leases? There's insecurity of tenure. Leases are uncertain. They are short-term. And in fact, you find that landowners, so suppose you've been leasing to one tenant in your same village, next year or next season, you may say, well, I'm going to rotate it among the tenants. So you might be in the same village, the same landowner, but you tend to rotate it. I found this recently in some work that I was doing in North Bengal. So tenants, as I'd mentioned earlier, don't invest in the land. They have no incentive to do that. If they invest the land in, the upgraded land would simply benefit the landowner and not the cultivator. And low productivity can persist. Tenants also can't access government subsidies. Why not? Because they are not, government subsidies go to those who can prove that they are cultivators. And typically it's assumed that if you're the owner, then you're the cultivator. And this particularly disadvantages poor and women farmers. And then the other thing is that if you have a reasonable size holding, you have non-farm income, as many do, you say, well, rather than lose the land, I'm going to leave it fallow. And part of the thing is that land provides more than economic benefit. It provides citizenship. It provides identity in a village. So people are deeply connected to the land. They want to stay in it and on it. So what are the potential solutions? Now, Dr. Joshi is not here, unfortunately. He was going to talk about the Model Agricultural Land Leasing Act of 2016, which was framed by the Niti Aayog. What I do know is that very few states have adopted it. And the real problem is, and we can talk about this a little more, and others would also join in, that the real problem is it's not the law. Often the law can remain on paper, but the perception that I can lose it and the difficulty of enforcement. Now, if you take an urban area, even if you own a little flat and somebody says, I'm not going to pay the rent and I'm just not going to move out, you can go for years of litigation. So I think this is the gap between the law and its implementation, but there could be other issues. So I want to use the rest of my time to talk about other innovative solutions. And this, I disagree with Pravesh that there have been no big ideas. I think group farming is a very big idea of institutional change that we have in agriculture today. So, but in the context of today's discussion on leasing, what if you had group leasing? So suppose a group of men or women, 5 or 6, jointly lease in land, then you don't create single tenant rights, which would be one-on-one. Now, there are many examples of group farming today. It's something that I've been working on. I'm writing a book on this on globally. But Kerala, Telangana, Bihar, Bengal, Gujarat all have group farms. And the most successful and best known is, of course, Kerala. Kerala in the early 2000s, under its Kudumshri program, which is the anti-poverty program, uh, launched a group. It launched group enterprise, and I won't go into too much detail, but happy to answer questions. Basically, the format is that households in a neighborhood join savings and credit, and then and this is all women, so they can then form all women enterprises, which would be 6 to maximum of 10 women. If they're doing savings and credit, they can apply to NABARD and the joint liability scheme and get subsidized credit for the enterprise. But what is important is that Kerala has formal ban on leasing. So how do you deal with that? How do you prove that you are cultivating? And they've come up with this idea that they'll give certificates to the groups as cultivators, which becomes a guarantee to say they are cultivating, and therefore they can access various kinds of subsidies and so on. And there are 73,000 all-women groups. So it's not one or two, it's across all 14 districts of Kerala. I've done a lot of economic analysis on it, but I won't spend time today, or right now anyway, on it. The third idea is a public land bank. Now, this is a joint ownership idea between Pravesh and myself. I was chairing the 12th five-year plan working group on disadvantaged farmers, including women. And he was also part of the team. And this idea, so what is the idea of a public land bank, where you have a third party as intermediary? So the broad idea is as follows, which is that suppose at the panchayat level, you have a person who sits down, they have all the details, the cadastral survey of all the land in the village and who owns what. And suppose Santosh here wants to lease out his land. After all, he's in Bath University, he's in Delhi, so he has land, and he'll say, I want to put in my land for leasing out. You deposit it virtually in the bank, and you get a small return for it. And perhaps somebody here in the audience comes in and says, I want to lease in land. So at this bank, they come and they are able to say, well, the person who's looking at this screen tells you, okay, there is land available, there are contiguous plots, what kind of land is available, and you can lease this. And the agreement, therefore, is mediated by the bank. And once the lease is agreed on, then the person who wants to lease out gets a proportion of the rent. So this is the broad idea. It is a complicated, it can have complications, we can discuss that, but the whole idea was to create a third party as intermediary. Now, in all of this, one problem remains unaddressed, which is there is completely imperfect information in a village of who are the potential leasers and leasees. How do you match the demand and supply for land by quality, by contiguity, and by location? So let me ask you, suppose you were in Delhi and you wanted to rent an apartment. You wouldn't go around the colony and knock on the doors and say, look, hey, are you willing to rent your apartment? What would you do? You'd go to a person who's an intermediary. We call them agents. But villages don't have that. So how do you know? Suppose you have a 400, 500 household village. How would you know, which is spread out, if I'm at one corner, who's willing to lease me land? What kind of land is it? Do I trust the person? They're not my neighbors. So what I've done is, I've never presented this before, but here it is. It's research I've been doing for 2 years. The names of my wonderful research team, they are in North Bengal, Dhananjay, who oversees it, Mithun and Masidul, who act as mediators of the Jameen Sahayak Kendra in 2 different villages, the Pranay, Shubham, Sanjeev, who are research teams, and Prashun, who does translation. Now, what we did was we started with a baseline survey, 100%, to identify people on how much land they owned, had they leased it out or leased it in over the last 2 years. and would they be willing to lease out and lease in? So you got this list, which we then gave a broad overview, and we located a person who was embedded to act as a mediator, one in each village, to assist farmers to arrive at lease agreements. They have a small office in each village called Zameen Sahayak Kendra. Now, both parties, the leaser and leasee, can approach the mediator about the kind and amount of land that they need or is available. They see the land and they arrive at an agreement. The mediators keep a daily diary, so you know how much time it has taken and what problems there have been in order to be able to arrive at an agreement. The leases are oral, but there is an additional, that the panchayat is told about the agreement, which reassures both parties that although we don't have a written agreement, it is not just underground. And in the first year, the mediator charged no fees. It was paid through the project. And the second year, we discussed it that he should be able to charge a fee because otherwise it's not sustainable. And this is just the results for 2 years. One in one village, the first year, 70 agreements were through the mediator were agreed to. This is 35% of village households, if you count both leasers and leasees, and free service. In year 2, 67 leases via the mediator, and he charged a small fee, and 88% paid up. I think this is pretty important about the willingness to pay. Now, what is the advantage of a land mediator? Firstly, each party can identify the land they want, how much they want, what quality it is, what is the location, and meet in the mediator's presence to create trust. Secondly, of course, it reduces transaction costs because the time needed to arrive at an agreement is much less. And there's a partial guarantee for both since panchayat is told of the lease terms. And it especially helps single women or women who are widowed or de facto female-headed households who have particularly limited information and mobility. Most importantly, it would reduce fallow land cultivated, which would increase total output. The one issue which needs to be solved is where the mediator whether it would be recognized for a space in the panchayat. Now, this is some feedback from leasers and leasees. This is through meetings that we held in September. The research is still ongoing. So here, for instance, a woman leasee said, I used to cultivate leased land with my husband, but after his death, no owner trusted me to farm well. Mithun, who's the mediator in that village, helped me get land on lease, and I now earn enough. Another said, I have never received this kind of support in my life. I will be happy to pay him a small amount for his help. The male leaser said, earlier I had to approach leasers from different paras. It took almost 12 to 15 days. Now Mithun is helping me get land on lease within 3 to 5 days. And then there's, similarly, another male leaser said that another advantage is that the local panchayat knows about our agreement. And then a male leaser, these are leasees, male leaser said, Mithun helped me lease out my land. Otherwise, most of the time, it remained fallow. Now, these are just vignettes, but we've collected systematic information across all the households which have leased in and leased out. So with this, I'll end with this last set of pictures. The Kerala group farmers, the Telangana group farmers, and the Gujarat group farmers. The Gujarat and then Bihar and North Bengal were started partly as a result of my writings. The International Water Management Institute read something I'd written in the EPW, and they thought that they should try that out according to the design principles. So, thank you.
Okay. Though we have a lot of time at the end, sir. I thought we'll have
2 minutes. I'll take the clarity.
Of course.
About the 70 agreements in the first year and the 67 in the next year, were these continued? Forgive me. Were these continued agreements or were these new agreements? This is what I want.
So I have to check that out. Some of them are no. These are you mean they are carryover? So we'll have to check that out. Many of them are new agreements, but the person kept daily diaries. So I extracted this information just 2 days ago, and that's a good point. But what they are all saying is that they are not, they would have had agreements anyway. Many of them may have had agreements, but the time taken is much reduced. So even if they had earlier agreements, they are now able to do it much faster. So the transactions cost argument of economists does hold.
Thank you for that. So this is such a panoramic view, madam. Thank you so much, and only to be expected with your, understanding of the subject. I'm sure there are lots of people wanting to ask questions, but we'll hear our second speaker, and then we'll have enough time to take up your questions and comments. So our second speaker is no less distinguished in his own field, Dr. B.S. Sidhu, former Commissioner of Agriculture in Punjab. He's an alumnus of Punjab Agriculture University, but as he emphasizes, in agriculture engineering and not in agronomy, which is why he has always been a votary of mechanization. He's a PhD from Chandigarh University, and of course, long years of actually implementing government programs, looking at this whole issue of diversification of crops. I, as a civil servant, when I worked in agriculture in Madhya Pradesh, and we would come for those annual jamborees, chaired by Mr. Siraj Hussain, we would look to listen to Dr. Sidhu, because as you will find out, he's not just a very insightful person, but he's also a very entertaining public speaker. So, Dr. Sidhu, it's your show now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I also thank you and Mr. Siraj Hussain for giving me this opportunity of giving me this time to speak. Actually, I am not a very good researcher. Basically, I am a public servant, and I have a superficial knowledge about land leasing, but definitely this, as far as the state of Punjab is concerned, I know almost, I feel I know that what is happening. So my title is it is an unfished end of our land reforms. Basically, if you look at the land governance framework in India, it is a complex maze of laws. So it's a complex maze of laws which has long hindered the economic and social development of the country. Even during this economic survey of 2023 and 24, it was highlighted that the major hindrance in achieving the multi-developmental goals in the country is the insecurity of land tenure. Others related to this being unclear titles as well as limited access to the economically viable land. So it was felt that to unlock the potential of India's land resources and to support the sustainable development and inclusive development, there is a comprehensive overhaul of the land laws is required. Land, it's a crucial but complex factor of production. It has a vital role in agriculture as a factor of production because it's as compared to other sectors of economy, it's the most required input for agriculture. In the recent years, there has been increased concentration and competition for ownership of land, even around the world. So land leasing, basically, it is being adopted as a alternate mechanism to purchase of land for securing the land tenure. And secondly, it is also felt that it requires a lesser capital investment if we can secure the land tenure. Land reforms in India at the time of independence, as Professor Agarwal said, we inherited the feudal agrarian structure where land right was held by most of the big zamindars and landlords. So at the time after independence, at least for 2 decades, for up to 70 or 75, we carried out these land reforms, which included the abolition of intermediaries, the abolition of and regulation of tenancy, sealing of land holdings, and redistribution of land to the tiller, and consolidation of land holdings. But basically, the major objective of these land reforms was to create conditions for an agrarian economy with high levels of efficiency and equity. So this didn't happen. If you look at the figures from, these are from NSSO survey, 59th round, about 12.6 million tenants conferred either their ownership or occupancy rights on 6.8 million hectares of land. But what happened? The restrictive tenancy laws led to the eviction of many tenants. Only 4% of the tenantal land was transferred to the tenants, while eviction, they were evicted from about 30%, 31% of the land. So basically, the land reforms of India, they did not achieve the objective for which they were made. But in Punjab, actually, the land scenario, this land leasing scenario was different. We didn't ban tenancy, but we had a right of presumption. As per again with the same data, 2012 leased area was 1/4 of the land in Punjab. So the Punjab Security and Land Tenure Act 1953, it doesn't either prohibit tenancy, nor it mentions that the person holding land within the ceiling will cultivate it personally. Khud kasht jo hum kehte hain, that khud kasht is not a legal term. It has come as khud kasht self-cultivated because of Section 16 of Land Revenue Act 1972, which provided that a tenant of a big landowner is entitled to purchase his tenantal land if it has been in continuous possession of the land for a minimum period of 6 years. So if you hold the land for 6 years, then you can purchase that land from the landowner. But there are 2-3 conditions. First, that landowner should have the land more than the ceiling, or it should not be a reserved land. Secondly, if the tenant has a land within the ceiling limit, then he can be evicted. Landowner can evict that tenant, but the tenant is to be left at least with 5 standard acres of land. So if the tenant doesn't have any land at all, he is landless. Even the farmer owning 17 or 18 standard acres of land will have to part with that 5 standard acres of land. And secondly, as most of the states, they banned this tenancy almost, but they also put a maximum rent as 1/3 to 1/4 of the produce or its value. But Punjab put it the land rent as 1/3 of the produce or its value. But with the onset of Green Revolution, tenancy started increasing, and as our Professor Siraj Hussain has rightly said in his inaugural remarks, that now we are shifting, Punjab is at least shifting from crop share to cash rent. The land leased on cash rent is about 94% as per 2013 data of NSSO 70th round. Why actually this change has taken place from this? This is just an outcome, or it is a side effect of Green Revolution, because we adopted the paddy wheat monoculture, and this paddy wheat monoculture over the years, it has almost eliminated the production risk, because almost all the land is irrigated, it's leveled, and there has been a year-to-year variation in yield, but since 2002 today, the wheat yield is growing at the rate of 1.2%, and paddy is growing at even more than 1.2%. So the total risk of the sharecropper, which land he feels that it would be transferred to landowner if it is sharecropped, that risk has been minimized. Secondly, there is no marketing risk. Whole of the produce, due to open-ended procurement, it is procured by the state agencies at a MSP, a minimum assured price, which is, of course, to some extent remunerative also. Of course, farmers are demanding C2 plus 50%, but still it is remunerative. Farmers at least earn something because of that. Thirdly, actually, again, 2019 survey, ma'am, of NSSO, it indicates that 57% of the land which is leased out, it is by small and marginal farmers who own less than 2 hectares of land, and 41% is from big landlords. So major chunk of the land is being leased out by the small and marginal farmers. It is a reverse tendency. So they actually, firstly, the small and marginal farmers, they take up alternate jobs. They are using their time for non-farm occupations. So they don't have time to supervise the use of inputs in this industrialized agriculture. So they go from sharecropping to cash crop, cash rent. And on the other hand, the big landlords, they are living in the cities. So they actually, they don't go at all to supervise. They just go to collect the rent after 6 months. So this is the third factor. The fourth factor is also the development of big entrepreneur tenant. A tenant who owns 5 to 10 acres of land, whether he owns it, but he has all the infrastructure to cultivate wheat and paddy. He has a tractor, he has the machinery, he has all the paraphernalia required for that. So he leases in the land. He leases in the land, and there is a easy availability of liquidity from commission agents because of interlocking of markets, of input supply, of credit, as well as of marketing, because the farmer has to sell his land, sell his produce through that commission agent. So he is more than willing to pay him the cash for giving the advance rent. So rent in Punjab is given half the rent in the 1st of April, and this next half is given after paddy, that is in the month of November. So these 4-5 factors have basically actually led it from sharecropping to cash rent. So we actually, not because of anything else, but because, as Pravesh Sharma said, that we wanted to diversify from paddy wheat cycle. So we, in 2005, when the second report of Dr. Joel committee came, that we should provide lease, we should provide more, shift at least 1 million hectares from wheat paddy cycle to oil seeds, pulses, and horticulture crops. So that is when we first started that we should change our land, this Land Reforms Act 1972, Section 15. So we started with that we should modify the speed of resumption from 6 years, we should change it to 15 years. The amendment bill was drafted, but somehow there was change in government, and it could not be put before the legislation. In the meantime, Niti Aayog, it constituted a committee under Dr. Haq, and I was also very closely associated because I had very good relations, personal relations actually with Dr. Haq, because when he was chairman of CACP for 5 years. So I was also attending the meetings of this committee. I attended one meeting in Delhi and 2-3 meetings of this committee even in Chandigarh. So this Model Land Leasing Act was circulated in 2016, and we constituted in Punjab, we constituted a revenue commission to modify this Model Land Leasing Act so that it can be implemented in the state, as oral leasing is already going on in the state. So in 2019, they prepared the Punjab Land Leasing and Tenancy Bill in 2019. Then government constituted a ministerial committee with the Revenue Minister and Finance Minister and Social Security Minister as members. They held discussions. We also participated. Mr. Yakadba, chairman of Farmers Commission, and I was working with as commissioner as well as member secretary with him. So we also attended those revenue commission meetings, and when this bill was being drafted. So ultimately we drafted this Punjab Land Leasing Tenancy, Safeguarding Rights and Enforcing Liabilities of Lesser and Lazy Bill 2021. This will aim to formalize the long-term land lease by maintaining a balance in the interstate relationship of lessor and leasee, safeguarding and enforcing their rights and obligations, removing barriers to investment, helping adopt new technology, and introducing the cultivation of high-value crops. Basically, these were the aims with which this bill was drafted. It actually, the basic terms of land lease, this land lease bill, it was slightly different from this Model Land Leasing Act, but it suited our requirements. The lease can be less than a year, it can be from year to year, it can be more than 1 year, and it can be up to 15 years. So that was the lease. But any lease which is beyond than 1 year, that will have to be registered under Registration Act 1908. And of course, for encouraging the farmers to get the lease done, registered, agreement registered, so we exempted the stamp duty from registration, and only a nominal fee of ₹100 were to be charged for registering the lease agreement. There was a default term that as the lease is terminated due to any reason or at the expiry of lease, it will be reverted back to the lessor. And lease agreement was also, though Model Land Leasing Act, it gave a copy of the model agreement, but we didn't include the this draft agreement, model agreement in the, but we specified that it will have the title of the land, it will have the address, then it will have 2 witnesses, this, that, all those details, they are mentioned in this bill. So if we look at the rights and obligations of lessor in this bill, so first is that he can lease in the land which is owned by him, or even if he has a mortgaged land, he can lease it. He will have to provide the possession at the time of lease, and he will be entitled to repossess the land after lease termination or after the expiry of the lease. He will not be responsible for leases, liabilities, or encumbrances unless it is provided in the agreement. He can make the improvements, but he cannot claim any compensation for those improvements from the lessor until it is written in the agreement that it will be depreciated and it will be paid at the rate of 10%, 15%, 20% per year, depending upon the period of lease. The ownership and mortgage rights are unaffected by lease. Even if the land is leased, the owner can mortgage it, owner can sell it, but the leasee will continue to occupy it till the lease is expired. He has to make disclosure of the material defects, litigation, anything which is there, and he will not interfere in the cultivation of land till the leasee is using this land for agriculture and allied activities. So these were some of the obligations and rights of lessor. And if we look at the rights and obligations of leasee in this bill, he was permitted to use only for agriculture and allied purposes. If there is a misuse, then the lease can be terminated, or the lessor can approach the assistant collector or collector or then the tribunal, and he can take back his land. He can cultivate without interference, but he can oversee whether he can go around his field. There is no prohibition from that. He can make improvements. There is a long list of improvements in the bill. You can install a tube wells, you can construct a water harvesting structure, you can construct channels, all those things which can give a benefit to the leasee. But at the same time, the lessor will not claim, he will get the same rent as per agreement. He will not claim any compensation for the improvements or increased income because of these improvements. Then multiple lease. A leasee can take lease from more than one person up to any extent. Then rent payable, if the lease agreement doesn't provide that rent will be paid in this month and this, then it will be paid in 2 equal installments on June 1st and December 1st. That's on the this in the agriculture, as we do it in agriculture year every 6 months. He must return the land undamaged and free of encumbrances after lease termination. Any payment of rent after the expiry of the lease doesn't mean that lease has been extended. That is another provision which in the bill. Then succession, it has also been provided that if the leasee unfortunately expires, then his heir successor will continue to take the lease. And if he doesn't want to keep the land on lease, then he will give a notice of 30 days, but at the same time he will pay the rent for that agricultural year to the lessor. Crop loan, he can obtain crop loan from banks, cooperatives, financial institutions. And failure to return the possession after the lapse of expiry incurs he will be a penalty can be laid to him, which will be at least half of the rent, and it can be maximum, it can be equal to 1 year of the rent. So these were the these are some of the rights and obligations of lessee. To other major provisions, actually, basically, this is that there will be only jurisdiction of revenue courts. There will be a tribunal. Tribunal will be headed by the person from superior judicial service, or he can be a commissioner of the government, or he can be serving or retired secretary to the government. So these are simply, but I mean, the one thing was there that no, actually I have not written the section 34 is that there was a bar for the courts. No court can extend the lease in any manner because of any dispute beyond the date of expiry of lease. Whatever may be the case, no court can extend that if the lease is to be terminated on 31st December 2024, then it has to be, land has to be given back to him on that without any encumbrances. Now, actually, why it is the next big idea? This is the recommendation of 15th Finance Commission. It says that it has recommended Government of India that you should start a program of 45,000 crores for the remaining 2.5 years of the tenure of 15th Finance Commission, where in these following 4 areas reforms will be taken: land lease reforms, sustainable and efficient use of water in agriculture, export promotion, and contribution towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. So if this program, Government of India is considering this program, it is lying with the Ministry of Economic Affairs and somewhere, but this now they have started at least half of it, that digitization of land records and all those. Dilrim is already going on, but they have started a new program. And the parameters of this, they have given even the parameters that how to measure the performance of the states. They say that you will cover the policies, change in policies of the state, investments in agriculture, development initiatives taken by the state, and the outcomes which are there. On the basis of this money will be distributed to the states. Then some concerns, actually, during this study, we carried out a PAU, actually, department. This is the last. PAU carried out a survey about, it was a small sample, but 300 farmers. With some concerns, they said that first they said that there is no limit for lease on leased area. Actually, farmers are feeling that there should be a limit, maybe 100 acres, maybe 200 acres, maybe 100 hectares, no problem, but there should be some limit. Otherwise, what he will do, he will take the land on lease, then he will plow all the boundaries, he will plow all the water courses, this and that for 15 years, and then when they will try to go back the land, they will not know where their land is actually. So this is a fear which was expressed by the farmers that there should be some lease. Then they said that apart from big landlords or people, local people, there may be some corporates who will take land on lease. So in case of dispute, how the poor farmers will go to Bombay to fight with Adani. So they said the head office of the leasing company should be in the state, so that at least they are safe. Then they said, what will be the collateral? Actually, they wanted that the land should not be used as a collateral. Only the future produce from that land should be used as a collateral to get loans from banks, finance companies, or financial institutions. One concern was also that how to measure the quality of land at the expiry of lease. I gave a very good land. He used it for 13 years, and in the last 2 years, he doesn't put any organic manure. He didn't put, he just sucks the land to get maybe even little less produce. So how to measure it? That was the this. And one more, actually, I was thinking that since it is a state subject, so every 5 years the government changes. If there is a change in policy, if there is a change in law by the government, what will happen to the people who have entered into 15-year lease? So that is also a concern by those people who are leasing out their land. Some suggestions, we should first hold the public consultation. So far, model land leasing act has been made and it has gone. We should hold public consultation with the academicians, with farmers, with bankers, with the revenue department officials, with rural development officials, with even agriculture department officials, so that at least some awareness is created, not only about the laws, but also their capacity building is done regarding the, at least part two, how to negotiate the lease and how about the dispute resolution. So actually some policy dialogue with national and state government agencies should be taken up. Then there should be a comprehensive public information campaign and awareness campaign where all the farmers, the creditors, the NGOs, the FPOs, all those should be made a part of this campaign, so that at least some awareness is there that government is taking this decision, and there is no, most of their fears are already allayed that this is going to happen, but you are not to worry about it. Then provide technical and financial assistance. I had written, but since I came with this 15th Finance Commission recommendation, so the state should be actually incentivized. Then there are some policy issues, for example, how to record the leases. If it is a short-term lease, you are to record for, even if it is to record for 25% of the area. So we have more than 26 lakh owners in the state. Who will every year register 9 lakh lease agreements? What will be the load of revenue officials? How much, what duration should be registered? They have said that the act provides that one year lease more than 1 year will be registered compulsorily. But what will happen to those revenue officials? So there are some issues which need some academic analysis also, and for improvement also, actually we have to carry out some research. So these are the issues. So this is the last line which I have written, that while the legal framework needs to be developed, yes, there is a need for it. To point to land leasing, it will neither be self-interpreted or nor it will be self-implemented. It is the political interaction of various state and non-state actors that will shape these guidelines, how these guidelines will eventually be interpreted and implemented from one setting to another. So actually this is the major question. By giving a simple one model land leasing act, doesn't complete the job of the central government. It should be thoroughly discussed with states, so that when implemented and when different clauses are interpreted, at least there are not a plethora of disputes or other things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sidhu. That was such a comprehensive and informative presentation. So friends, we have half an hour, and I intend to take up maybe batches of 3 questions at a time. Please mention who your question in the panel is directed at. If you have a preface, please keep it brief so that we can have maximum participation. So the floor is open. Yes, please, sir, at the back. Okay. Is that for Dr. Sidhu or Dr. Sidhu? Okay. Let's take one. Let's take one. Yeah. Anyone else for this first round? Yes, ma'am. Come to the back, please. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you can use.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm Diksha. So the question that I want to ask, when Sir Sidhu discussed about the Punjab's land reform agreement, so related to land leasing, so there was a point mentioned about the undamaged land, which is very much subjective. So this loophole can be used in maybe like more court cases compiling already on the
So-
burden.
Subject for
Yeah,
further
it is a very
confusion.
subjective-
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Make on the side and then. Yes, please.
The Parsa, I'm a journalist. This is what Dr. Sidhu, this company leasing the land, is it from the small farmers or from the big farmers? And what is the extent of the land they are able to lease? Is there a limit on the land a company can lease?
Dr. Sidhu's.
Is there a limit on the extent of the land a company can lease? And is it leasing from the small farmers or from a big farmer?
Dr. Sidhu is obviously very popular. Is there a question for Professor Agarwal in this round? Yeah, please. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Santosh Mehrotra. Fascinating, Bina, as expected. I'm a UP Wala, and my interest is in UP and Bihar. And I was interested in when you were talking about initially when you were talking about group leasing, you mentioned 4 states: Kerala, Telangana, Bihar, Bengal, and Gujarat. I noticed that Bihar is in there. Are there other states, or you were, for brevity, or you didn't include them? I'd be interested in how widespread has it become, and even in, I mean, so you have examples of northern states as well as southern states. I was fearing it might be confined to the southern on account of the land. You know the historical legacy of the two types. So I mean that's one, if I might, and can I put another one to her, in which I'd be delighted to hear Dr. Sidhu on it as well, which is, and it goes beyond your presentation if you don't mind, because you people are experts in this, and we want to, I think as an audience we want to learn from you. One of the big elephants in the room is legalizing MSP for 23 crops. We would like to hear, I would certainly like to learn from you about your views on this, the pros and cons from both of you. I think it will be very useful for all of us. Thank you.
We'll park that one. So let's take up this first batch. Dr. Sidhu, you have the lion's share. But, please feel free to bunch them. Or...
No problem. Now, regarding stubble burning, we actually, if you remember, since you are living in Mohali, we, of course, private individual is a private individual, but government officers, for example, me, we banned that if any government employee who is either giving land on lease or who is cultivating himself, if he burns his stubble, actually then he will be penalized. So burning, of course, burning directly it has no link with land leasing. If we link it basically it is the retaining of residue in the field or collecting of residue from the field. Both of them have a cost, and the person who gives on rent, he is not willing to leave his share or get a lesser rent so that the farmer can manage. We have been managing this straw in the field itself when the diesel was 33 rupees a liter, but now it is with diesel rates 94 rupees a liter, and tractors at that time, those were 35 horsepower tractors, and we used to used to manage it. We never burnt the straw. But now actually this cost is becoming prohibitive, and this matchstick doesn't cost much. So farmers are burning. And here the issue is even the policy of government. Actually, I wrote an article that lend farmers a helping hand. I told them that you don't give any machines, you don't give anything, but still you can control it. How you can control it? For example, this year they have increased the MSP of paddy by almost 100 rupees. They could increase it by 50 rupees, and they could say that 50 rupees per quintal will be paid for not burning. And I tell you, not even a single one will burn, because 24 quintals per acre is his yield. And with 50 rupees, he will get 1200 rupees, and he is asking 3000 rupees per hectare. Not much. At least cost of diesel will go. Actually, it is our policy. We have to tell the farmers, yes, we are giving you this money for not burning. You use whatever you want, and they will use whatever they have. They will not buy a 2 lakh super seeder with 80% subsidy. They will use their disc harrow, they will use their cultivator, and they will manage the straw. They know how to manage the straw. Sir, actually, this is a favorite subject. हाँ जी हाँ.
Corporates.
जो ये 2021 का लॉ था, ये असेंबली से पास हुआ?
ये असेंबली से पास नहीं हुआ ना,
तो फिर लॉ बना ही नहीं.
नहीं, मैंने लारी कहा, मैंने बिल कहा है.
नहीं, he is asking ना whether it is not a law.
Are they leasing from the small farmers? And is there
Actually,
The law does not exist.
Before this could be put to the assembly, the farmers started the agitation on the borders of Delhi in 2021, and we could not, because of fear of electoral setback, the government did not put it in the assembly, and it is still lying. Simple.
That was the question. The third one?
Third one, I don't know what.
Young areas?
You please repeat. I actually, I don't know.
No, it will lead to, I think she's saying it will lead to disputes, further lead to disputes.
Yes, it will lead to dispute, but disputes actually, the dispute settlement is very simple. You have to apply to the assistant collector, and he will give his decision within 30 days. And if he goes for appeal in next 30 days, the decision of collector is final, and collector, the decision cannot be taken to any court. So definitely this is a subjective question, and I said in my concerns also, I said that yes, this is a concern, how to soil quality, if it is degraded, or if some damage is done to some building or property, how to evaluate it. But still it can be evaluated, if the government wants, these can be evaluated.
But since we didn't have the enactment, we
Yes, actually though, this is yes.
Okay, I'll also add something to what you said. Group farming, in order for group farming to succeed, you actually need government buy-in and support. And so Kerala did that. Kerala actually had an entire set of institutional mechanisms, bottom-up planning, which went prior to this, which is why it's expanded. Telangana, it didn't go through the government. It was in UNDP project, and I've talked about the difficulties, the differences between Kerala and Andhra, because in Telangana, at that point Andhra, but when I did the study, but now Telangana, it was grafted onto a Mahila Samakhya program. So if you design a new program, whether on land leasing or anything else, on innovation, it has to be, the purpose of that has to be clear. In Kerala, it was an economic program. It was for economic empowerment. In the other case, there were groups that had been formed for social empowerment, on which you grafted this on. The then derivative groups that emerged were actually a result of my writing. In 2010, I'd written an EPW paper, Rethinking Agricultural Production Collectivities. So in 2015, I got an email from the International Water Management Institute head in Nepal saying, we have used your design principles to start group farming in Bihar, North Bengal, and the Terai part of Nepal. And then would you like to come and visit? So I did. There's no, Nepali, no. It is the International Water Management Institute, the head of that. And so it was that whole belt. They're smaller in number because, again, unless the government buys into it, you can't expand it in the same way. The Gujarat groups emerged. There were 1 or 2 groups. And again, I did a workshop with the Gujarat NGOs, and then they picked that up. So what I'm saying is that there are these possibilities. What's interesting about the Bihar and Bengal groups is that they're all male groups, they're all women groups, and they're mixed gender groups. So they didn't have a prior mandate that should be all women. And this is very interesting because in the case of Bihar, a lot of the land, there is feudalism still. What the farmers could do was they consolidated their land. So they brought in irrigation through the International Water Management Institute. And then they were able to argue with the landowners that we are not going to give you free labor, that your family is not going to come and pick up the vegetables as you want. And one of the things that's happened here is that you've had youth groups. So there used to be quite a lot of out migration. And you find that the youth groups have also taken to it because they find that if in 3 months, if you have irrigation and drip irrigation, you can do cultivation of vegetables. So it's part-time farming. I think what's happening across India is really part-time farming. So if we have these innovations, you can bring those in along with your other possibilities of non-farm jobs. I want to say a couple more things. One is the question of, we're discussing these fine-tuning about damage. Nobody leases, when you lease in or lease out, there is no fine-tuning of what is the quality of your land. So how are you going to assess damage? If I rent out a flat in Delhi, then I have pictures of exactly what it looks like. You can't do that for land. So I'm saying that, let's first get the basics right. Sidhuji, I feel it requires more discussion for the bill because I don't see how it addresses the main problem, which is that you have insecure leases. Why would either party go in for more than 1 year leases at all? Because if you invest in the land, you do soil quality improvement, the landowner is, you said the landowner is not going to take that into account. So it doesn't solve the initial problems that we're trying to solve. And I do feel I would very much like responses on the 2 ideas that we put together. It's not the final idea, but one is the issue of the land bank. Can that become an intermediary, a third-party intermediary, and the issue of groups, and having a mediator in the villages, which is very low cost and which is very possible to do. So I would like that. Pravesh, could I share one other aspect which I want to bring to people's attention?
Let us just take another round of questions.
Then I'll come back to that of one other.
3-4 minutes. Yeah, I think you had.
I think the students have first right.
No. Everybody will get a chance.
Okay, that's
we have
okay, that's fine. Madam, I've got just 2 questions. The first is based on what Madam is. Oh, my name is Sanjay Mishra and I work for Department of Biotechnology. Biotechnology. I'm an engineer, so probably I'm not in an area expert as you pointed out. Just one question which may not be directly related but somewhat related. As an engineering person, I understand that it is the agriculture efficiency and productivity. If I look globally, you require a large land size. So in India, the land holding is like 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever. So if I look at it from technological intervention point of view, to have the productivity, we need larger. So whether you do leasing or subleasing, unless this land size is larger, the new technologies which are coming globally, probably we're not going to help. So I mean, how do you explain that, like we are coming to that side, or this is going to help or not to help? That's one. And second point is, as Madam has pointed out about the two models. And the one, because you just asked for the specific ones, again, I come from UP side, so I can say from UP and Bihar. In one of your presentation, you mentioned that the leasing is already there. The transaction cost from 15 days, that is reduced to 3 days. That was the one of the differences. If I come from, let's say I take UP in month of May and June, when there's a completely time is free, the new season starts in the month of July. So if I'm a farmer, I don't care for 15 days, 3 days, because in the whole of June in UP at least is free if I'm already due. So I mean, what is that advantage beyond this time? And on the same point, you mentioned about the middle or the agent. I was trying to compare from the, let's say, renting something in Delhi, because you have a large bank of both buyer and seller. The market is large. You have intermediary. But if I look my village, I don't find, because some villages you have excessive land. People have moved to Mumbai, people abroad. Nobody wants to have. In some villages you may have. So one could be only buyer, one could be only seller. So you have chosen only two samples. But for a country like India, I'm not sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sheil,
yeah.
we can
I'm
tell
Shireen,
you.
and thank you for the insights you shared with us. So my question is not about leasing, but the Sealing Act. We had a great Sealing Act in our country, but the thing is, the whole country, we couldn't apply it. Like, we got it good in Kerala, in Bengal, but apart from that, like in UP, we see farmers are having quite like large chunks of land still. They own that, and they misuse law. I don't know how, because of the corrupt bureaucrats. So how do we like only 2 3 states could implement it well? So can you please elaborate it? Thank you.
See, back and then you. Just come to the mic if you don't mind.
My name is Harsha. I'm a PhD student. My question is for Professor Agarwal. With respect to the joint farming examples that you discussed, whether it's the land bank or any of the other intermediary solutions, how do you work through the question of not just informal leasing but informal lending, especially in situations where the landowner is also your primary informal lender of money? Does the land bank, for example, have its own capacity to raise capital, to raise debt? Thank you.
Yeah.
You just mentioned about,
Please, if you
yeah,
don't
my name is Amrita. Yeah. So you mentioned the distribution of the people who are leasing land in terms of, you said 50% were small farmers, and in comparison to the others. But I also wanted to know that before, when land leasing was common, and in comparison to after the 2016 Act, and in states where they have adopted, what is the caste situation like in terms of, do we have data on that, or in terms of caste distribution in terms of who is land leasing? So I wanted to know perspective on that. Thank you.
I can take one more. Anyone from this side? Yeah, Ajay. Yeah, okay, we'll come back. I'll come back for the next one. Yeah, Ajay.
I'm Ajay. I prefer to call myself a farmer today. I don't think so. I'm guilty at all. I'm proud of it. I'm not guilty about it. So there's a difference out here. Okay, but no, I'm proud of that also. So question is, ma'am, I didn't understand from your presentation. Are you in favor of a new tenancy act? And second is, are you in favor of a tenancy act ensuring landowners' right of getting his land back? I mean, this is something that you talked about land leasing acts, but you missed this point. So if you could just clarify your opinion on these two things, that should the landowner get the possession of his land back, or he should not get it back? Like, that was one of the main provisions of that is also one of the only provision, actually. That's the main reason why you need a land leasing act. So your points on these 2 points were missing in this thing.
Yeah, Bina ji, you can take this round. I'll have a.
The first point is, are you in favor of a new land leasing act? And the second is that should the Land Leasing Act have the provision that the landowner gets his land back irrespective of what happens on earth? Yeah.
Several questions. This has nothing to do with popularity, number of questions. It has to do with lack of clarity, perhaps. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for those great questions. Some of these are clarificatory. Right. The Sanjay Mishra's question. So here's the thing. 86%, I think 84, 86% of India's land is cultivators under 2 hectares. But 84% of farmers across 111 countries cultivate less than 2 hectares. This includes, by the way, surprisingly, many European countries. So let's see this. This is a global issue. Now, how do you, and it's also true that the farms are too small to be economically viable, to be sustainable, and also sometimes they are in fragments, but we don't have that much fragmentation. And nevertheless, how do you introduce new technology? Now, there's a paper that two American economists, Andrew Foster and Mark Rosenweig from Yale, had done, where they asked, are Indian farms too small? And they'd looked at this data and they'd said, they'd looked at from the very small farms, at what point does it make a difference? And they found that profitability increased up to 2 hectares, and then it continued to increase up to, I think, 6 or 8 hectares. And then after that, it didn't matter. I don't remember if it's 6 to 8. But basically, there was a threshold up to which you increase the size. And what were they talking about? They were not talking about economies of scale as such. They were talking about economies of scale of machinery, which is part of what your concern is, which is technology. Now, my solution to that is that you can be very small owners, but you don't have to be tiny producers. And that's where the group farming comes in. So if you take Kerala, for instance, the average size of a holding is 0.35 hectares. The average size of the holding of the research that I did is about 1 point something hectares. It's still small, but if you take the Kerala context where it is much more agroecology and multi-cropping, it makes a big difference. I compared the rates of return of group farms versus the individual family farms on data that was collected, weekly data for every input and output, for every crop, every plot, for 11 months. And Kerala and also Andhra, at that point Andhra, now Telangana. I found that the group farms had 1.8 times the annual value of output compared to the individual family farms per hectare. It had 1.6 times the net returns, taking account of paid out costs, per hectare. And per farm, it was 5 times higher than the individual family farms. Now, here technology, it comes in. They are using, they were new crops. The technology issue comes in the Bihar and Bengal examples, where you have the men. So suppose you have 2 hectares or 3 hectares, and you have one plot there and one plot there. What they did was that they pooled together owned land and maybe for, let's say, 6 farmers. Those plots which are together, to up to 2 or 3 hectares, they manage that. And that's where the irrigation technology was introduced. So what I'm saying is we tend to not talk about the institutional solutions to technology. We tend to just talk about technology. And the institutional solution is lying in groups. I'll take, just give me 2 more minutes because there are lots of questions. The informal lending, you don't go through that, the student who asked that, because you have NABARD, and the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development did a huge innovation when it said that if you form these groups and you've done savings and credit, without collateral, will be able to, extend you credit. So more and more people can take advantage of that, not the land bank. The land bank is simply an intermediary for leasing purposes in terms of that example that Pravesh and I put together. There's one institutional solution which we haven't looked at. We tend not to look at other countries. We tend to look inwards. France, which I've studied at length, has another institutional solution. And Chakarji, this will partly address your question. They have an institution called SAFAR. It was set up in the 1960s. And French farmers, I did like 6 months of research across two provinces of France. And French farmers sometimes lease in from 50 to 60 owners. Their whole, the farms are based on leasing in. And there are group farms. There are 90,000 group farms across France, of very similar, all male, predominantly male. And what does SAFAR do? What SAFAR does is that if he owns land and he now wants to say, oh, I know Bina and I would like to lease my land to her, SAFAR says no. We have some criteria who the land will go to, and they tend to favor the younger farmers, etc. So there is an institution intermediary which is government regulated. So Thakurji, in relation to your question, are you in favor of a land leasing act? I don't think it's going to solve the problem, because if you see the Punjab Act, firstly, I fail to see how you can actually lease out mortgage land. I mean, in the Act, it says that. Then if you have 11-month leases, we all know that anybody can be thrown out. So it doesn't address the problem of insecurity either from... So this one, which allows you 11 months, may not be the no, but I'm saying non-registered. Non-registered 11, less than 1 year is non-registered. Right. So the question is, if you're a landowner and you're fearful of this, you unless you're living in I don't know, Manchester, and you say I've got all this land, you may or may not want to lease out for 15 years. In France, it's 9-year leases. And it's rotational. So people don't lose their land. And you can take it back if you want. And no. It's a maximum 9 years. You can lease it for smaller periods. No, I'm just saying that the laws that we are considering are really, again, back to two-person land, the leasee and the leaser. And I think there is a problem because we need, there's no way to implement it. How do you enforce it with all these disputes? Who goes to court? I'm merely saying that, can we think of other solutions like that, which are not just individual? And that's where the land bank and other examples that we gave. Of course, the owner should get the land back. Of course, they should get the land back. Yeah.
No, she answered. Yes.
So the Chatham House rules, he wants a return.
No, just a question, just a clarification. The whole idea for having a land lease act today is because the present laws don't allow the farmer to get the land back. So it's not that we want a new land leasing act. The present, we are reacting to present circumstances. Okay. And I think
why don't you amend the
so it's the same thing.
In the 9th schedule, the laws that you have, each state can amend it. It's just that at a federal level you can't challenge it. It's been amended many times, like the UP Zamindari version has been amended. So is that
we were amending that only?
Let me. Yes, madam.
My name is Gaurika Chugh. Ma'am, in one of the solutions you had mentioned about the land mediator. But ma'am, my question is, how do we ensure the accountability of the land mediator, since land ownership in India is highly contested, since we follow the system of presumptive land titling? And what should be the formal and institutional processes for introducing, this mechanism of land mediator? This is my
You're
question.
worrying that there may be a new class of Aratiyas this time in land, is it?
That's what I want. My question is very much related. My name is Sakshi. My question is related to Gaurika's question. I want to question the sustainability of the idea of mediator. On the long run, will it? Yeah.
Dr. Sidhu, you talked about, I'm Gurinder Dua. I'm emerging technologies like blockchain. So you talked about digitization of land records. I'd like to know how far that has progressed across the country. Secondly, Dr. Agarwal, you were talking about issues of intermediation. She also came out with how do you account for it, and she also had a question on that. Then you were talking about trust banks and group farming and things like that. So technology like blockchain technology can actually address all these issues. So is there any thought on going in that direction? Yeah. No, I mean, maybe far-fetched,
Got
but
it. I think you take your question first, then we.
The digitization of records, it started in Punjab. Actually, digitized all its records, land records, all are digitized. But only thing is that daily, at least in every tehsil, 10 registries are taking place. Problem is updation. Actually, we don't have a regular department. We outsourced it and they digitized it. So regular updation, it is required. So this, what they are doing now, they have started a 5,000 crore program, Government of India. Now they will be giving the assistance to states. It will be regular updation. How to do it? They are developing some software. This is that the person who will get registered, he will do it himself.
Yeah, fair enough. You can, Binaji, skip the blockchain thing since you're not familiar. We'll be separately. But the other question.
So all those questions I'll consolidate because they're all about the mediator. So Mishra ji, I didn't answer the second question. And so land mediator is just a person, is not dealing with titles, etc. I mean, if you do a full census of a village and with cadastral surveys, you actually know what the titles is. If you any computer, if I was sitting in a village, I could say, okay, these are the land, I have the entire map. What you don't have is, of course, who's leasing in and leasing out. So the cadastral service will not give that, but that can be done by a quick survey of the village by whoever is the mediator. Now, the leases, it's not just transaction costs which are saved. The first year, most of those 71 leases were new leases. Because, and we asked that, we did a follow-up. I still have to analyze this. We asked whether it's an old lease or new lease. And this, many of the older leases, they didn't have to go to the mediator. They went through the mediator when it was very difficult to arrive at a lease, or there were new leases. And the second year, it's important because they're willing to pay. Now, why would somebody who already, if you're a chacha bhatija, jiska bhi hai, jisse lena hai, aap pay kyun karenge? You pay the mediator because the service is very valuable. And that's what we are finding. So I think that's important. The sustainability relates to that, take, as I said, Delhi, you want to lease a person, there are these agents who move around and they try and sustain themselves. In a village, obviously, it's not going to be that paying. So they decided between them that we're going to charge only, the mediator said, मैं 300 charge karunga. And 150 will be paid by the leaser, 150 will be paid by the leasee, and most of them paid up. But over time, it could be more. I don't think it can be a fully sustainable occupation, but it can be if you're actually from the village. So for instance, in one case, the person is actually in the village, but that's not enough because you do need an office. So if the panchayat, Sidhu ji, aap bhi iske bare mein thoda gair farmaye, ki if there is in the panchayat, you made it one of those services that the panchayat could take forward, then and say, okay, here's a person, and it's part of the services we offer, and they can be an agent. But villagers don't like the word agent, so it's a mediator, because agents are the ones who fleece you if you're selling your land. So it can be sustainable as a part-time employment, as is the case for most jobs that you're getting in villages today. No. You want an independent person who's trustworthy, but not linked formally to the political system. No.
Right. So I'm going to have to because we have overshot, so I'm going to give 2 minutes closing comments to both our panelists, and we can continue this informally if the speakers are available after this. Yeah. Quick comment.
Just quick. I'm just saying, small farmers leasing land are the most distressed farmers in India. And most farmer suicides, I mean, not most, I'd say more farmer suicides are more in small farmers leasing land trying to increase profitability.
The premise of this whole discussion is that we do need a legal framework. I think nobody here has put up their hand and said, listen, this is a waste of time. What is happening is great. It is not great. That's the whole purpose of this debate. Yeah, Dr. Sidhu, 2 minutes.
Ma'am, actually regarding mediators, I personally feel I am leasing my land for the last 20 years. I own 32 acres of land in 3 villages. I never need a mediator. People come to my house in Chandigarh to take it on lease. Because when you know, in village, everyone knows everyone. And when they know that everybody will come and offer more than the first one. So that is not the case. And we select, actually, I always select a person who at least owns some land himself, but who has all the infrastructure and all those things, so that even if he pays me 2,000 less, I don't mind. But he at least maintains my land. So yes, sir, this is definitely we require this land leasing law, and we require. Ma'am, another thing. There is no difference in the productivity of crops in Punjab, even if the farm is, whether the farm is small or whether the farm is big. It is size neutral. Everybody gets 24 quintals of wheat per acre. Yes.
Okay. Bina, 2 minutes to wrap.
So I think the 2 main points I want to make is that we need not individual solutions, but we need aggregates. The group farming idea is not about land leasing, because it's about land pooling. That's the essential idea. So even the Kerala women, 1 or 2 of them may have small plots. They put it in, but the group leases it. So the group pays a rent to the woman who is part of the group, and then everybody's labor is the same.
As a legal entity.
Let's not add another question. We'll do it over a meal or so on. So the issue of, so when you say yes, the landless are very distressed, yes, they are, because they're leasing on their own. But you are leasing as a group. These groups can sign contracts. They have banana contracts for the top bananas in Kerala. Why do you go to them rather than individual farmer? Because they can deliver on contracts. So Jakarji, between you and Sidhuji and so on, the point is, can we go beyond the law? I've worked a lot on law, and the laws remain on paper. It's very difficult to implement. What groups do is they create trust, they create social capital, and they enable you to implement the laws. Otherwise, you can have, if you look at if you just download the land lease thing, there are 10 pages of that lease. I mean, which farmer would want to sit down and tick all those boxes? But I'm just saying that. And the answer of the group farming thing is that our farms are very small. As I said, you don't want to take away their land rights, but what you want to do is give them an option of pooling. Now, some of that pool land may be your own, and some of that pool land may be from outside the group. Some things may not work for Punjab, although I think the issue of imperfect information exists everywhere. How many widows and women who are de facto come to the large landowners to say, "Mujhe itna chahiye," and you'll give it? You'll say, "No, I don't want to give it to you. You won't be able to produce the right amount of profit that I need." This is what the women in North Bengal are saying, that nobody trusted me. My husband and I would lease in land, and now the Sahayak, the mediator, has been able to create that trust so that I can lease in. So I think we need to look at the issue of inequality and not just efficiency, and that's where the institutions really help. Most of India is still disadvantage. And that's all my plea is. Let's also think of other approaches.
Thank you so much. Before I ask Siraj Saab to conclude, I would just like to quote Professor Ramesh Chand, member of the Niti Aayog, at a recent public lecture. He said that if we could adopt a formal leasing framework for agricultural tenancy, it would perhaps be one of the most pro-poor steps that we could take at this stage. And as Ajay very rightly said, today the disproportionate share of informal leasing is borne by smallholders who need to maximize their family labor potential by leasing inland, but is, as everyone I think has confirmed, it's under conditions of great insecurity, no control over rents, and I think we all perhaps want a way out of that. These emerging ideas around formal legislation, though they are, halted at the moment, they have not been able to, I think, see the light of day. But I believe that civil society pressure, especially from the farmers, and Bina ji, of course, has passionately argued for formal pooling of land, especially by women, group farming. That can certainly be one of the, I think, options that this framework should contain, but also for individuals, for FPOs, for SHGs, or any entity which is interested in farming. So, Siraj Saab, your final words.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Bina Agarwal and Dr. Sidhu. Several new ideas have come. I would only like to say that even people like us who own some urban property in the form of flat or whatever, we are very reluctant to sign leases for fear of losing the ownership. And it is a very real fear. Whatever your lease agreement may say, Dr. Sidhu, tomorrow it will go to collector, commissioner, and obviously the landowner will find it impossible to get it back. An easier option was under trial for long years in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, that is to record the village Lekpal used to record who is actually cultivator. And even that has faced so many problems in the last few years. Unfortunately, no one from Andhra Pradesh spoke. He was here, but he has gone away. So the previous government in Andhra Pradesh said that they will amend the law which was existing in 1956 and 2011, but they could not do it. And they said that the person who is actually cultivating, his name will be recorded only if the landowner gives written permission. So written permission was not given, so it was not recorded. So there are a lot of difficulties in doing this. And somebody asked about digitization, and there is a lot of excitement about that. My fear is it will again cause an agitation similar to farmers' agitation. If the government insists that every landowner will go to a Seva Kendra and give information about who is actually cultivating the land, then we may again see the farmers on the borders of Delhi. It is going to be very difficult. I think Madam has given several good ideas. In any case, instead of a central, in any case, that 2016 law was only a model law. And it was up to the states to do it. I do not think there is any interest in the states to actually, go against the landowners. In fact, in Telangana, as you know, the previous chief minister was very much against giving any money under Raitu Bandhu to tenant or anyone. And all the money actually went to the landowners. So we should continue to write about it and come up with new ideas like group leasing and things, bank, etc., maybe at the informal level. So we look forward to your continued writing, madam. And Dr. Sidhu, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming.